Yeah, I actually have a big question for Emily before we start getting into the recall campaign generally, because I feel like the US system is sometimes very confusing for a lot of people outside of the country. So I wanted to ask you, Emily, if you can explain what recall means, what are we actually fighting against?
So, yeah, a recall is basically just a mechanism to remove someone from office. But recalls here in Washington state have a whole series of undemocratic mechanisms kind of baked into the very structure of them. First, it's the state Supreme Court who actually gets to decide whether or not a recall can move forward. As Marxists, we know that courts aren't just neutral arbiters of justice, right? They're tools of the state. And the courts in the US, most egregiously, also have authorized segregation, driving indigenous people off their land. And that's why the recall on a fighter like Kshama Sawant, who led the way on the $15 an hour minimum wage and the Amazon tax, gets the green light. Where contrastingly, recalls brought forward against our thoroughly corporate mayor for authorizing tear gas on an entire neighborhood, and also a recall against a right-wing sheriff in another part of the state who refused to enforce a mask mandate amongst his officers during the pandemic. Both of those recalls were deemed frivolous by the state Supreme Court. So it's just a way of removing an elected official. But the basis for the recall charges that in Washington state never have to be proven in court. They then appear on the ballot as though they have been. So a huge thing we're constantly having to talk to voters about is how deeply dishonest the charges are and how the whole recall attack against Kshama Sawant is an attempt to criminalize the Black Lives Matter movement and to send a message to the 26 million people who participated in BLM last summer that peaceful protests are unacceptable to the establishment.